to be here, and I want to thank Rotary for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I know I have only 15 minutes, so some slides, and I'll end up with some happy note of what we have done in. I come pictures from Haiti, which some of you have not seen. So this is Sri Lanka. Just to remind you that I'm from Sri Lanka originally. So the HIV has changed quite a lot. Today, with that I know, if you have a half a decent physician, nobody should die of HIV. Nobody. And nobody should get infected with HIV as well. Because we have done studies where if you have a discordant couple where the husband is positive and the wife is negative, or wife is positive, husband negative, we can treat the husband and get the viral load undetectable, and we can prevent transmission from partner to partner. Or else, if you want to party on a Saturday night, you can start on, say, a couple of days before one pill called Truada, and you can party and you won't get infected. So these things I don't tell patients, but I can tell Rotarians because I know you won't do it. But if you decide to do it, start on medicine. It's like a pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's like a birth control pill. You can start on day one and then you can party. So having said that, across the world there are 33 million people infected with HIV. Unfortunately, majority of them in Africa. It's 22.5 million. It's almost like 15 times more than what we have. The tragedy is that their healthcare budgets are so low that they can't afford to give medicine. One of the things, as you know, I'm a Democrat. One of the things I am very proud of what President Bush did, which none of the Democratic presidents did, was to start a fund called PEPFAR. The PEPFAR alone, President Bush was responsible for saving over 3 to 4 million people in Africa. So he had to give credit to President Bush. I mean, he set the trend to the rest of the world that rich people will give money to the poor to save lives, and it is wonderful. And if you look at the new infections, now I said that today in the United States people usually don't get infected, but the problem is that I work in Miami, and last 2-3 weeks I saw 5 new cases. They were all gay white males. And they were highly educated. One was a law student, one was a director of a company, and these were young gay men, highly successful, and who are going to be successful. I mean, a law student. I mean, it is impossible to understand why they would have unprotected sex quite casually. So, and it's shocking. So things do happen, but we try to protect this from happening. So, but if you take across the world, 97% of the people who are getting new infection are in the low and the middle income countries. So usually is India, Sub-Saharan Africa, and even China, and the Eastern Europe, which is going through drug abuse problem. And about 1,000 of them are, that is about 1 in 7 is under 15 years. And that's because, again, sex and child abuse and stuff like that. So if you focus down on the United States, about 61% of the US population who are infected with HIV are homosexual, having sex, men having sex with men. But having said that, if you take the rest of the world, women, the heterosexual transmission is much greater than homosexual transmission. In fact, in India and in Sub-Saharan Africa, if you're married, for a woman, is a risk factor for HIV. Because you trust your husband, who cannot be trusted, and your boyfriend, you don't trust, so you use a condom. So married women are at a higher risk for HIV than unmarried women who are, before I came, I was doing STD in England, and we used to tell that it is safer to hire a prostitute, or what you call a commercial sex worker, than meeting a girl at a bar and going to bed. Because most of the people, when I was working in Nottingham, I don't do STD here now, that I found the men who got STD were the people who picked up a partner in a nightclub in Nottingham. So, but if you look at the rates of diagnosis of HIV infection, Florida is leading 36.9 per 100,000, so it's fairly high. And if you look at the ethnicity among the spread, again, African Americans are higher than the rest of the population. That is partly because it's the economic and the healthcare disparities that exist in our society. No matter what people say, there are two forms of healthcare and everything in this country. In fact, Peter Pitt, who is the director for WHO, once said the problem in the United States is that there's a third world in the inner cities, and US has failed to recognize that there is a third world. If you look at the demographics, the education, the job prospect, everything, they have created a third world in the inner city, which we have to break through if we want to become, what we want to be. If you look at the healthcare outcomes of United States compared to the Western world, we are 31st. We spend definitely at least 3 times more than anybody else, more than Sweden, more than Switzerland, more than Britain, but we are 31st. Our healthcare outcomes, of course, we don't trust Cuban data. Cuba has better healthcare outcomes than us. Of course, we don't know, these all, statistics have been fixed. But at least, if you know the Western world, we are 31st, so we are not doing a good job. And that is reflected here. So the people living with HIV are increasing because people are not dying of HIV. I have not had a death in my clinic, except the guys who wanted to die, because they're doing drugs. They will die of something else. They won't die of HIV. So it's very interesting. Becky was mentioned that when HIV first started, we didn't have any drugs. I saw people die in 1990 when I first came to 92 here. It was horrifying to see people die. Horrifying to see people die for nothing. I had a case where a Nicaraguan woman had failure and HIV, and she was drowning in her lungs, because in renal failure you go into the fluid gets retained and the heart gets lungs get clogged with water, and all you need is to dialyze and you can pull the thing out. And I walked into Jackson and I see this patient and I look at my team and I say, oh, well, let's get her dialyzed, she should be okay. I know she's going to die eventually of HIV, but today she doesn't have to die. So I walked to the phone and I called the nephrology attending, and I said, listen, I have this patient and I have to dialyze and he's pulmonary edema. He said, sure, send the patient. And he said, what's the diagnosis? I said, HIV. He said, no, I'm not going to dialyze. I said, why? Because she's going to die. I said, but she shouldn't die today. He said, Jay, I know you're a Buddhist and all that. This is not going to work, because I'm not going to block one of my dialysis machines for your patient. And he drops a phone on me. And I was so devastated. I almost cried that day, because I was so devastated, because here's a woman's parents falling on my feet, literally falling on my feet saying, Doc, save my daughter. 2 minutes later, I get a call from the nurse who was the head nurse of dialysis machine, called and said, Dr. J, I'm coming and picking up this patient. I'm going to dialyze this. I said, what's going to happen? He said, listen, I don't care if I lose my job. I'm going to dialyze this patient because my brother died in New York 2 weeks ago. And so the patient lived. So I'm just giving you the signs that the virus gets in and blocked. I don't want to go into detail, but now we can block virus completely. And one of the things that happened is that in 2015, 50% of the HIV people will be over 50 years. So the demography of HIV is slowly changing. So, and my oldest person is 86 years old, a young lady, a Cuban lady who, not young, a 26-year-old, but she looks young. And I never asked how she got it, because I don't want to embarrass her. But 86 years and she does ballet at 86. And the thing is that, as I said, none of my patients die of HIV, and that's reflected in the national statistics from CDC, where most of the people, at least half of the people die of other things, not AIDS. At least in Jackson, we hardly lose people due to HIV because they die of cancer or other things. Because when your immune system gets disrupted, when the immune system is down, the things that prevent you getting from cancer is your immune system. And in fact, one of the treatment for cancer now is vaccines to boost your immune system to control malignancies. So in HIV, there's a high incidence of other malignancies which leads to death. So with that, I'm going to switch to hepatitis C. This is a beach from Sri Lanka. So hepatitis C is a different ball game. HIV was 34 million, 33 million. Hepatitis C is about 200 million. I worked with an activist called Jules Levin from New York. He believes that all these numbers are low. He thinks that across the world there are about 400 million. And in the United States it's closer to 4 to 6 million. And he thinks that in New York there's about 1 million, which I don't believe, but he thinks so. He's from New York. So, and you can see even hepatitis C is mostly common in African American, in sub-Saharan Africa. But hepatitis C is also common in China, in Vietnam. My wife is from Vietnam, and China, Vietnam, and the Western Pacific region. So there's a huge, and the fundamental difference between HIV and hepatitis C is that hepatitis C, the virus replicates in the, if you take the human cell, outside the nucleus. So it replicates in the cytoplasm. So as a result, the genetic material of the virus does not get incorporated in the host genome. And as a result, hepatitis C is one of the viruses we can cure compared to HIV and hepatitis B. HIV and hepatitis B, because the virus, the part of the viral proviral genes get incorporated in our genes, you can't actually cure HIV or hepatitis B, but hepatitis C can be cured. Right now, there is a huge boom of drug development, which is going to change the entire landscape of hepatitis C. I'll explain to you later. So, relative importance of it is that the IV drug use is one of the contributing factors for hepatitis C. It's going down, but still people use. I saw a patient last week, young woman, 28 years, born here, and she injects. She doesn't inject heroin, she's cheap. She uses Percocet. She cracks the tablet, cook it, and inject it. Horrible stuff. It's horrible stuff. I mean, if you work at Jackson, you see everything. So I hope Jackson survives all this turmoil that's going on, because Jackson actually provides such important care to the people. And I hope the divorce between University of Miami and Jackson also becomes less, more peaceful, because it's affecting everything. So these are the different forms: the sexual transmission, blood transfusions, and unknown. Unknown is usually sex. People always lie about sex. When you're young, you have a lot of sex, you pretend you don't have sex. When you're old, you don't have sex, you pretend that you have a lot of sex. So, so sex, whenever say it's unknown, it's usually sex. So, and then the thing about is how many people know that they are HIV or hepatitis C. And here you see that out of HIV, the undiagnosed, 1 in 5 people HIV do not know that they have HIV. And people somehow think that they don't have to be tested, but they do. In fact, one of my friends from North Carolina ran a study where they took the people who didn't want to get tested and unblinded the blood samples and ran a study. And their chance of being HIV was about 7-fold higher than the people who knew. So people who don't want to get tested actually at a high risk. And out of hepatitis C, 75% is undiagnosed. So you can see that there are a lot of people who are undiagnosed. And earlier, CDC used to say that hepatitis C does not transmit sexually, because hemophiliacs, who the wife is negative, or the men have hemophilia and the women do not have, women are the carriers. And when hemophiliacs married their wives, the wives never got infected, because hepatitis C transmission is very poor compared to HIV or hepatitis B. But in the sexual revolution these days, where the gay people, I take sexual histories from people, and so I can tell, I could write a much better journal than Penthouse or any of these bad magazines. I can make up what men do with men. It is amazingly crazy. And so when you have crazy sex happening among these different people, what happens is that there are cofactors like gonorrhea, chlamydia, which changes the entire dynamics of viral transmission, and the sexual transmission happens. So age and sex is usually 45 to 65. CDC just came up with the guidelines that everybody between 45 and 65 should get tested for hepatitis C at a primary care visit. And again, it is more common among African Americans. non-Hispanic blacks. Again, it's nothing to do with the race. It is all due to healthcare disparities in this country. And here's the life cycle. And these are the so the way the drugs are developed is that this is the life cycle of the virus. The virus enters to receptor, and replication entirely happens in the cytoplasm, not in the nucleus. So as a result, once you get into the virus, there is no archiving of viral genes in the host. And we have designed multiple drugs to block viral replication. And in fact, one of my other jobs is we do drug development at University of Miami. We have a clinical trial. So when we get a drug, we will run studies at University of Miami. So what speeds the progression of hepatitis C? So drinking alcohol, clearly. I mean, we all know these happy hours. In fact, I have a grant from NIAAA trying to stop happy hours because I know Rotary likes happy hours, but NIAAA thinks that giving drinks cheaper during this time leads to alcoholism. So that's the NIH view. So people who get hepatitis after age of 40, being male, males are always punished, smoking cigarettes. I spend more time talking about cigarettes than sex in my clinics. Hepatitis B, HIV, and legal immune system. So when you tell people not to drink, you don't usually say take only one drink, because if you tell take one drink, people get a large glass. So we generally say 1 ounce. Just 1 ounce. Trust me, I have people like that. So these are the drugs. I particularly want to pinpoint one particular drug called PSI 7977, which was developed by, I know the guy, Resha Nazi from Emory. This guy is a multimillionaire. He has developed 7 HIV drugs and 5 Hep C drugs. This drug was bought by a company called Gilead Pharmaceuticals for $11 billion, and Ray's cut on that was $500 million. Sorry, 500 million. He got 500 million for that. So what I'm trying to say is that all these drugs put together can cure hepatitis C completely. And these are the drug development of US. So there are so many drugs. They are fighting with each other to come up with the right drug. And there is, so basically what I'm trying to say is that over the next 15 years, we will wipe out hepatitis C if the politicians give the money and the pharmaceutical companies are not greedy, because they also set up prices like tenfold higher than what it really is. And with that, I will show you Rotary in Haiti. This was one of the pictures. As you know, I volunteered to spend a week in Haiti when the earthquake happens. One of the first buildings we saw. The money that we give to Rotary International does good. This is the tent that I slept in. But there were other people from Haiti who were sleeping on the streets with those two. This is how the Haitians we were looking after. It was, I mean, just tents. This tent was donated by Alonso Mourning, the basketball player who is a big donor for University of Miami. This was all made by University of Miami. And this is me with the US Army guy who is I don't know, actually, can't remember his name. So everybody wanted to take pictures with him. This is Sanjay Gupta. He came to visit our camp when the CNN was covering our place. And that's Sri Lanka, and thank you.
Quick question, could you comment a little bit, by the way, this brought back some fond memories when I was involved in research at Factor VIII for hemophiliacs many years ago and developed assays for hepatitis C and B. The audience might be interested to understand why hepatitis C is such a really bad health situation, because I believe there's a higher risk of liver cancer relative to, for example,
I didn't want to go much too much
hepatitis B.
details. So when you get hepatitis C, the problem with hepatitis is a slow killer. It stays in your body. Usually the effects come after about 20 years. So 15% of them will 15 to 25% will spontaneously resolve. The balance will go into chronic hepatitis C, and the rest, and then they will eventually develop cirrhosis, it's end-stage liver disease. And then about every year, about 4% will develop liver cancer, which is a hepatoma, or end-stage liver disease, which needs a transplant. Usually a transplant costs about $250,000, plus every year $50,000 to keep the immunosuppressant. So those are the spectrum of diseases that. But not only that, hepatitis is a multi-system disease. I mean, it can affect from kidneys to nerves to everything. So,
a lot of viruses mutate over time. Medicine finds a cure, the virus finds a way around the medicine. What do you see happening with HIV and hepatitis C?
it's a good question. In HIV, that's a big problem. So as a result, we have to make sure that when people go on medicine that they are compliant. If you are compliant with medication, the virus cannot develop mutations. As long as you keep the blood level of the drug above the level that is needed to kill 50% of the viruses, which called IC50, you can always, so it's not that if you're on medicine, the virus will develop resistance. If you're on medicine, if you skip doses, then the virus develops resistance. As far as hepatitis C is concerned, it's not an issue because the virus replicates in the cytoplasm. If you develop resistance, still it doesn't get archived. The problem in HIV and hepatitis B is that as soon as the virus develops resistance, that gets into the human gene and stays there. So next time I come with the next drug, that gene triggers and the next generation of viruses come completely resistant. So, so HIV, there's a big problem. And we are encountering that more in Africa because WHO were using cheap drugs. And I don't understand the WHO at all. We all knew that what they were going to do was going to create resistant virus in Africa, and now they have developed it. So now we have to go with the second generation, which is more expensive, which is really, which is a problem. So that's a huge issue.
Earlier you said that very few people today in the United States die of HIV. Is that because of the so-called opportunity diseases? In other words, I'm wondering if HIV kills a lot of people indirectly by reducing the effectiveness of the immune system, so other things kill people that become the registered cause of death, like, for instance, pneumonia.
That's a good point, but generally, the CDC and the surveillance data, whenever somebody has a death with HIV, we look at the spectrum of diseases that are categorized under opportunistic infections. If any of those falls under any of those, it's attributed to HIV. What's really happening is that people are dying now of, in Miami, they die of gunshot injuries, but apart from that, people can die of cancer of the liver, different things, which is unrelated to HIV, but they are not opportunistic infections. But so in US, opportunistic infections are less. People are not dying of opportunistic infections anymore. At least it's gone down quite a lot. The people who die of HIV is coming from unfortunately from the inner cities because of a very complex healthcare system. Even if they know how to get Medicaid, they don't know how to apply. When they apply, people give such a hassle. The Medicaid, Medicare, and all these insurance things. So as a result, the people just give up and they die. So that's what's happening. So what we are trying to do is to improve our case management so that people know what's available to them and then you got to get treated.
The celebrated case of Magic Johnson and the way that he's lived for so long after he admitted that he had HIV. HIV, what is the life expectancy of a person?
Forever. Nobody should die of HIV.
Yeah.
Magic is a classic case. I have a patient, in 1992, patient had a CNS toxin, died. I was in urgent care at Jackson, just in front of me, the guy was seizing as if like Hurricane Andrew, like the guys, we had to give so much drugs to control him. Put him on a study, myself and Margaret Fisher, we put on a study, just plodded on. Today, his immune system is as good as yours and mine. He's on one pill once a day and completely back to normal. So you can kind of change things around.
But we say we can't cure.
You cannot cure, but you can't cure diabetes, but we can suppress.
But you can maintain.
You can maintain. They would die. Nobody should die. Nobody should die unless you get a cancer. Sure.
Well, this all leads someday to something. You might have answered the question to the deterring cancer, or since these breakthroughs are coming through with HIV, will that carry over to cancer?
I think so. I think HIV developed our laboratory techniques to an extremely high level, and some of the work that was done on immunology is spilling over to cancer. So I think even the cancer field is slowly moving towards vaccines, gene therapy, and we believe that everything is genetic. So everything, I mean, University of Miami spent $100 million on a genetic institute. Everybody is in this bandwagon looking at, especially when you had the GWAS project, the Human Genome Project, where now we have every gene, we have sequenced the entire human genome. So now it's a matter of data mining to find out what disease with what genes will switch on and switch off. And the current drug development is all to alter these genes so that if you have a cancer, if you know that your cancer is because of this gene is turned off, I give a drug to turn on that gene. And then the advantage of those is that the side effects are less. So you're just switching off that gene, and then your cancer will get suppressed by your own immune system. So that's spilling out.
Just one more comment. When all these diseases started, there was a huge concern about blood supply safety.
Right.
Because a lot of the donors were the very people who had these diseases or whatever. Any comments to make people happy that the blood supply should be pretty safe?
I think the blood supply, at least in the United States, I make a joke that only Buddhist priests get HIV from blood transfusions in US. That's a joke, because they don't have to admit sex. I can say because I'm a Buddhist. So blood supply is very, very, very safe. I mean, they have all this time we were testing HIV on an antibody. Now we are testing. Now our technology has come to a point where we have tests where antibody antigen are tested at the same time. So no longer there is this window period where antibody development will be delayed and you can miss the test and have a false negative test. So now the blood supplies are tested by antigen, and it is
and
very
it's
safe.
also just for hepatitis C.
Hepatitis C, hepatitis B, it is very safe. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. Thank you so much.
Okay.